Welcome to the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 106th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I have with me the Boston Herald's Steve Conroy. Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Mark Divver has joined us as well from the Vineyard. I hope things are great down there, Mark, and the Wi-Fi is robust as we speak. But thanks very much for joining us. And let's get right into it. I just want to get, Mark, and you can kick us off first. I want to get your thoughts on where Jeremy Swayman's contract negotiations, where you think they might be right now, and what you think is the right deal for him, in your opinion. What do you think? What do you think he should get? What do you think he will get, Mark?
Well, this is a total guess on my part. I haven't talked to anybody on this. Contract talks like this are not really my wheelhouse, but somewhere in the $8 million a year for 8 years. I think isn't that what the neighborhood that I think the Bruins would be comfortable in, and hopefully the player as well. If it's more than that, well, I don't know. Has he? I love the kid. I think he's a terrific player, but has he really earned that at this point? And teams around the NHL are always throwing money at guys who haven't earned anything. So to lock him up and have security and have that position taken care of for the long term, maybe you overpay. You probably do.
Yeah, you said $8 million a year.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
or somewhere in that neighborhood, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay. And I actually wrote about this on Boston Sports Journal the other day. I think 8 would be an overpay, in my opinion. It would be a bit of an overpay, and for this reason. And you'd be paying for the future, which sometimes happens. Like you're paying for future performance, which a lot of teams will do or are willing to do. But if you look at the $8 million goalies, especially the ones that have signed recently, guys like Shesterkin, who was the other one? Well, Hellebuyck is up there. Goalies like that are in the $8+ million range, and Hellebuyck is getting closer to $9 million actually on his contract, and rightfully so. But the thing about these guys, and Shesterkin's maybe a little bit of a better one to look at, those guys have all at least played 50+ games in a season for multiple years in a row. With Hellebuyck, it's over 60 games a season for a bunch of games in a row. Hellebuyck has won Vezina trophies. Shesterkin has been, I think, in either the top 10 or the top 5 in Vezina trophy voting, 3 times, I think. And it's no fault of Jeremy Swayman's own that he hasn't been able to put up those numbers because he's been sharing time with Linus Ullmark. But at the same time, a lot of contract negotiations is comparable contracts, right? And comparable stats and putting yourself next to another goalie. This is what this goalie makes. Jeremy Swayman is very similar to this goalie. This is what he should get. And I just don't know if there's a comparable goalie out there to Jeremy Swayman with the numbers that he has right now that's making $8 million a year. I think it's much closer to 6 to 7, somewhere in there. Even Saros didn't get 8. And you look at his numbers next to Swayman's, and he's been over 60 games a year. He's been a workhorse for a while. The last contract, when he was actually in Swayman's situation, which is he was splitting time with Rene, and he'd played similar amounts of games, he signed for 3 years and $15 million. And then when he took over, was the number one guy, was playing 60+ games. That's when he just got the long-term 7.25, 7.5, whatever it is, million. And he got a little bit more now after really performing well. Was in the Vezina Trophy voting every year, has been a workhorse for them. If you look at the numbers and you look at what other goalies are getting, and I was wondering this because I assumed, like everybody did, just give him $8 million, give him what the other starters and the star goalies are getting in the league, make him happy, like he deserves it. He's going to be their number one guy. But I just don't know if his numbers are in line with getting that kind of deal. Does he have to take, or do the Bruins want him to take 3 years, $18 million or something like that, and get him to 28, 29, and that's when he gets the huge deal with the $8+ million. Maybe this is what the holdup is. on the contract and both sides coming together in agreement, because I'm sure there's pressure too from the league and from the other GMs to make sure that they're not giving Swayman this ridiculous contract when he truthfully hasn't really put up the numbers to earn it yet, and hasn't even been once he plays 50 to 60 games, proves that he can do it, I'd say you give him all that money. When he hasn't done it yet even once, like he did it for a month in the playoffs, I don't know that I would give him that much, but they obviously traded Linus Ullmark away, and he's in a great negotiating and leverage position now where, he can kind of command a little bit of what he wants. Steve, I'm just curious your thoughts on all of this with Swayman in his contract.
Well, he didn't file for arbitration, I'm guessing, because, he doesn't want to get paid for what he's done. He wants to get paid for what he will do, or what he thinks he will do. And, at some point, and the Bruins didn't file either, which I think is probably, you can interpret it as a good faith non-action by the team. Yep. I would think the Bruins would want to go 8 on this guy. And it wouldn't shock me if the Swayman side wanted to go shorter term to hit it big when he's 28. I would give him the Saros deal in a heartbeat.
Yeah, the 7-8 years, 7 point whatever million, somewhere
7.75, I think it's 7.4.
Yeah, and I think you could reach to that. You could even reach to that, I think, on a shorter. Well, if you give him the problem is if you give him that much on a short term deal, you're putting him in a position where he's going to get mega bucks the next time around. You're putting him in a position where you're going to have to pay him. But I guess suppose if he gets paid that much, he's kind of earned it, and you're happy to pay him if he turns out to be, can play 65 games a year, is a great playoff goalie, all that stuff. If he earns that money, you'd end up be willing to pay him. But it's funny when you look at the numbers. The Bruins will be taking a big leap of faith with him, even if they give him that kind of a contract and they go, max term, full length, big money. And they give him something like the Saros deal. They're really locking that goalie up and putting a lot of betting out there that, he's going to be able to be consistent playing that kind of workload. Performance, mental and physical isn't going to be too much during the season. He's going to be able to stay healthy, like all that stuff. What has he played? The most he's played, I think, in a season is 44 this past season, right? So you're putting a lot of faith in his ability to really extend and keep the performance consistent much further than he's done to this point.
Well, sometimes you gotta say to yourself, do we believe in this player? I think they believe in the player. They did it with Charlie McAvoy. Charlie McAvoy, he got the 9.5 there, and there was a little bit of a leap of faith there. He'd shown he was going to be a good player, but they believe him, and they were put into a corner where they had to choose whether they believe in him or not. And they do. I think it was probably a good decision. But they just, is it an ideal situation for the Bruins to be in now? Probably not. No. But it's the position that they're in, and they just have to deal with it.
Yeah. Now, once they traded Ullmark, that was the cannonball into the pool of like, hey, we're putting all our faith in this. And I agree with you. I read into Jeremy Swayman obviously was not going to go for arbitration after the experience he had the year before. He was very vocal that it wasn't a good experience for him. It wasn't pleasant. He didn't want to do it again, wasn't going to do it again. And to your point, I think the Bruins definitely very good faith on their part because, like, honestly, when you look at the numbers and you look at the comparables, he would have made much less if they took him to arbitration. If they took him for 1 year – he would have come in much less than whatever he's going to get from them in a contract, and it would have definitely been.
And you alienate the player. You get.
Yep. It would have been short-sighted on the Bruins' part too.
Yeah.
A 3-year deal. Correct me if I'm wrong. He'd be a free agent after that, right?
Yeah, UFA. Yeah.
So
that's what I mean. Like.
That's another thing that the Bruins would be buying into something like 6 years of UFA territory for Swayman. So they have to give on that front.
No, definitely. If they're going to sign him to an 8-year deal, it's going to be that, probably that level because they're buying out all those years of free agency. But I just think there was no way either side was going to arbitration after he made it perfectly, distinctly clear that he didn't want to go. And you remember this, Steve. I think you were sitting next to me when Sweeney made a point of saying Swayman took us to arbitration.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, they have a right to make that point because it's not clear to a lot of people.
Yes. Mark, and I know you haven't done any digging on this, and I really haven't either. It was just I finally, over the last week or so, really started looking at the numbers because I like looking up the comparables, and I always think the contract stuff is interesting, and trying to figure out what side is using as this is the guy you should get paid like, and the team same thing. When do you think this could or should get done? And I think it was a great sign to see him at development camp. He was on the bench. I think he was on the ice one day. You had tweeted out a video, I think, Steve, of him working out a little bit. It was great signs to see him around, talking to the kids, being a presence. When do you think this could or should get done? Because, like I said, Mark, he's got the ultimate hammer over the team with Omar gone now. Like they have to sort of accede to his what he wants a little bit here.
Well, I would think, hey, it could be today. I mean, this could end at any time, right? Hopefully, that would be nice if it did. But the longer it goes on, then whether there's any difficulty in the talks or not, the perception will be that there's something holding it up. So I would think it would be in the interest of both sides to get it done and to just get on with the rest of the summer. And the summer's short for these guys. We've got a couple of months here ahead of us where maybe they could just relax and not have to be beating their heads against the wall every day until this gets settled.
Yeah, I agree. What got me on this is I just think everybody was sort of assuming, and rightfully so, that 8 years, 64 makes a lot of sense. Like he's going to get $8 million a year. That's going to happen. And like I said, I think the Saros contract, I think Steve may be right on that one, that I think it's going to be closer to that. I'm not sure he's going to get 8 just based on when you look at the numbers and what he's actually done and what he's proven and what he hasn't to this point. The Bruins are taking a little bit of a risk here, just not knowing if he can be that workhorse guy that can play 60-plus games. So that may cost Swayman a little bit in the long term if he wants that long-range 7-8 year deal to stay in Boston. And he's been consistent. He loves being a Bruin. He appreciates and values the franchise and being a part of the franchise. He wants to be part of the picture for a long time, and there's been no wavering on that, and I don't expect there to be any wavering on that. So I do think it's going to get done at some point. I just also think if it starts to bleed into training camp, that could be problematic. So it's in the best interest of both sides to get it done as quickly as possible, as Mark said. Let's also thank Game Time, your best place to get Red Sox tickets at Fenway this summer. And actually they're winning some games, so you probably do want to get Red Sox tickets at Fenway summer. Although, for me, I might use Game Time I saw yesterday that Journey and Def Leppard and Heart are going to be playing at Fenway Park in August. So I may use Game Time to go see that threesome, because I went and I saw Poison, Motley Crue, Def Leppard, and Joan Jett last year at Fenway, or it was 2 years ago. Wow. I can't remember. That was like one of the all-time great concerts. The Def Leppard was unbelievable. I would definitely go. I mowed a lot of lawns in middle school with the Walkman playing Def Leppard in my ears, Evan, back in the day. Young Joe Haggerty was like 12, 11 years old. Game Time is a great place to get tickets for concerts, baseball, all that stuff right now. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Zone deals, you save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. This is just good stuff, so take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, create an account, download the app, and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's do a few mailbag sort of questions here from the public at large. I thought that was an interesting way to go this week beyond the Swayman contract. Here's one from Archie Rhodes. Steve, Carlo's name shows up in 2 rumor reports, and I love these summer rumor reports when people are desperate for clicks on their websites, especially the Facebook posts that are completely misleading. Those are my favorite. Carlo's name shows up in 2 rumor reports in the last couple of days. Anyone think there's any weight to it? The first one was absurd to the Rangers, but now there's another one to the Buffalo Sabres from Archie Rhodes. Steve, I just don't think with how much they pay Carlo, it's a value contract. What he gives them, leadership and performance on the ice, killing penalties, like all that stuff. Unless it was like a massive, like Leon Draisaitl kind of trade or something like that, I don't see any way that they would be trading Carlo, especially to a team in the division. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, you never say never on these trades, but yeah, I think the Bruin fandom, vastly underrates what Brandon Carlo brings. He covers a lot of ice. He's also probably been one of your best defensemen of these last two playoff seasons. Most consistent. Yes. I mean, he had that toe pick in Game 7 that probably would have haunted him for a long time. But he survived that, and the Bruins survived it. But he's a very good player, very consistent. He's had some injuries at inopportune times, but he's a very good player, a perfect middle 4. Should I say? Number 4 defenseman, maybe number 3. It'll be interesting to see where Zadorov, kind of matriculates into the lineup, whether he plays with McAvoy or he plays with Carlo. But yeah, Carlo, like you say, if it's for Leon Draisaitl, yeah, maybe. But
right.
But yeah, no, I'm not trading him just to trade him.
Yeah, no, I don't foresee any Leon Draisaitl coming to Boston either, by the way. Let's not start that rumor. But yeah, I think it would have to be a blockbuster like that for Carlo to be involved. Just such a consistent player, and really good in the dressing room. I think he's a valuable leader, a very steadying influence, a calming influence in that dressing room, a real leader that has figured it out, I think, in the last few years, that he's not a kid anymore, and that he's kind of setting the example for the younger guys and really embracing that sort of role. Not to mention he's just big, strong, has played with a little more of an edge the last year or two, which I think he really needed to, and it's been a good part of his game as well. But killing penalties, shutting down guys, killing plays, being consistent in the playoffs, just being big and strong at a position where the Bruins haven't always had the biggest and strongest defenseman. I think it's been very important. And you pair that with the contract, which is good value for a guy that can play 20 minutes a night, will play 20 minutes a night, and will be a top 4, whether it's number 3, number 4, whatever, especially when you pair him with a puck-moving guy that is a quality defenseman on that second pairing. I think that enhances his value even more. Mark, any thoughts on Brandon Carlo and any kind of trade, wackadoo trade rumors out there about him?
Yeah, I'm not buying any of it. But here's a guy. This is the sweet spot of his career, right? I think he's not a kid anymore. He's not. He's just right. This is prime time for him. He's figured out some things about his game, and like you guys have said, the price is right. I don't know why after making the play for Zadorov, why would you make a trade like that and take away a player like Carlo? Unless you were like, one of the ridiculous rumors was Trouba, right? Trouba. Why would you trade for him at this point, given the money he makes and his stature as a player? Let's face it, in the playoffs that wasn't pretty. Jacob Trouba. So I'm.
They already took back one bad contract. That's about enough.
Yeah, right, exactly. You don't need another one. So, and the thing about Carlo is that every once in a while somebody in the media or on TV will say, "Well, geez, isn't there some offensive upside there?" And my thing on him is, let's be happy with what he is.
Yeah,
he's a good player. He's a steady player. He's a defender. Don't downgrade him because he's not Brad Park. He's a hell of a player just as he is. His offense is it's not really. He's not great in that category, but all the other things he does make him a very good, effective player. So,
and I think he's gotten better as far as the offense goes, to the point where like he's going to give you a little something every once in a while. He'll make plays, and he certainly has always had a pretty good shot from the point. And there are things that he does that it's what you would hope to get from a stay-at-home defenseman, a shutdown PK kind of guy. Like he brings that to the table. In addition to every once in a while, sort of really stepping up and making a play, like he'll take the puck down low and find somebody in front of the net. And you've seen him do that a few times a year. And it's starting to become more frequent where he's like taking a risk here or there when he knows it's a good calculated risk to make a play. And he does it in a smart way that's not really costing his team, which is like part of being a veteran. But yeah, he's never going to be like, the problem becomes there's such a like infatuation with fancy stats, and he's definitely never going to be a fancy stats darling kind of player. He's just not that kind of guy. But like, yeah, there's no reason to take on like Jacob Trouba is a true bad contract at this point. If you're taking something like that on, like the Korpisalo one, I'll argue all day long that there's a limit to how bad that contract really is that you're taking on, because it's not huge money. It's you're overpaying a little bit for a established backup goalie. Like it's not that bad to the point of what a lot of the criticism has been, even though it's for 3 more years. But like a Trouba kind of thing would be a lot worse, I think, especially if you're trading out a good value contract like Carlo. All right, here's one from Kevin Chase 18. So statistically speaking, Pasta and McAvoy stunk up the playoffs big time. I think that's definitely could be argued because opposing coaches target them physically. How are the Bees fixing Pasta and McAvoy? And I'm assuming they're talking about during the playoffs. Mark, your thoughts? Well, let's get to the playoffs before we figure out how those guys are going to, how you're going to counteract teams defending them. I can't say specifically what they should do to break Pastrnak free. I mean, every coach targets a guy like that in the opposing team's lineup and says, we're going to take that guy out, and here's how we're going to do it. I don't know what the plan would be, but I'm confident they would come up with something that would allow him to, be himself. Guys like him or high-scoring wingers or forwards playing against a team like Florida that just is so physical and so in your face. That's you blame Pasta for that. His relative lack of production there. Or do you credit the other team that this is how you play a guy like that, and then they go out and do it? So, I mean, I don't know. I think that's something to worry about, like next April, not here 2 months before the start of the season.
Uh-huh.
I agree, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, one of the ways they can counteract that is to have another scoring threat on the line with them. Maybe Lindholm will be that guy. So, I don't know what his numbers are right now, but I think he went into the playoffs, as a point-a-game guy in the playoffs. So he's produced in the playoffs, and he produced a hell of a play to win the first-round series. They just need more scoring. That's one of the reasons why I'm not wild about the Korpisalo contract, because I think it could have been spent in a better way, because you've got Brandon Bussey there. And would it be a gamble to go with Bussey? Yeah, of course. But sometimes you got to gamble. Yeah,
and I think the bottom line is absolutely right when it comes to the playoffs and getting more out of these players specifically. The answer, or part of the answer, is getting better players around them. Getting more guys around them that take some of the weight and the attention off of them that right now is just too much. I think for Pastrnak, it's definitely having another, playmaking offensive kind of player around him that can set him up, that can, distribute, that is going to take defense's attention away from him to a point. And hopefully Lindholm is that guy. Hopefully Lindholm has the kind of season playing with Zacha and Pastrnak that he had a couple years ago playing with Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk. And I know that's kind of what the Bruins are sort of hoping, envisioning, is putting him with, world-class players, or putting with high-skill, good players is going to unlock more of the offense and allow him to be more of the guy that had, 40-plus goals and 80-plus points in Calgary a couple of years ago, and maybe that helps Pastrnak in the playoffs just by virtue of being with higher caliber players like that. Now, I'm with you. I think they need to get a winger at some point. Maybe it's at the trade deadline, another scoring threat. Like, I think the carousel of players they're probably going to try out with Charlie Coyle and Brad Marchand on that right wing. I don't know if that's going to work. So you may still be a top 6 forward winger short, when you start the season as you kind of like go through these players. But as far as McAvoy goes, I think McAvoy, the only thing I felt like he was really guilty of in the playoffs was trying to do too much at times. And I think he had to, because of who he is and because of like the kind of defenseman he is and because of that defenseman core. I think at times he was trying to be the puck mover, the offensive creator, the big hitter, the shutdown guy, like do everything and be everything to everybody. And I think he got exhausted as the playoffs were going on, trying to do all that and sometimes getting himself out of position and getting himself in bad spots by trying to do everything all the time. And you bring in a guy like Zadorov and you potentially play him with McAvoy. I think that frees him up to maybe try a little bit more offensively and to, be smart about it, but focus a little more on moving the puck and being the sort of offensive factor that Jim Montgomery wants him to be without constantly having to be the guy where the buck stops on the back end too. And the sheriff that's kind of throwing big hits and keeping the other team honest and intimidating them a little bit. And I understand why Sweeney slipped a little bit and mentioned Zadorov and McAvoy playing together when he talked about it, when he signed him, because I think that might be a great partner for Charlie McAvoy to unlock more to his game as well.
Yeah, you gotta at some point give the other team some credit too. Florida made Adam Fox look pretty bad too.
Yep.
It's Florida's a challenge. How they bounce back from winning the cup, we'll see. But they're a tough team to play against, and it's probably good. Go ahead.
I wonder if the addition of Jay Leach will help McAvoy at all in terms of, I don't know, getting over some of those hurdles, just in terms of, overall perspective. They didn't have a defenseman on the staff last year to kind of ride herd on the D. So I wonder if adding Jay this year will have an impact on. Obviously, they think it will help, or they wouldn't have done it. But I just wonder in terms of Charlie and where he's at, whether Jay can help. Charlie's Charlie, but maybe a little nudge from a D coach like Jay can help him just a little bit.
I think that's a great point, Mark, and I think. Guy like Jay Leach, I think, is going to be excellent for Mason Lohrei too, as he's, transitioning into the NHL, and I think there's going to be expectations for him next year to take a step up and to really, start challenging for top 4 minutes and playing in more situations and seeing how good he can really be at the NHL level. And when I heard they were bringing him in and that he was joining the staff, that. Lohrei and McAvoy is a great point because I think he's going to be very helpful to him too. And you can always use just a sounding board defenseman wise on the coaching staff. But I think the first guy I thought of with Jay Leach was Lohrei and how big that's going to be for his NHL development.
Yeah, and I'm very interested to see how Lohrei plays this year. I'll be honest, I was shocked at how well he played in the playoffs because he wasn't, he was up and down in the regular season. Sometimes he was aggressive, sometimes he wasn't. There were times where he would let the other guy get the puck in the corner, and that was a red flag to me. But he didn't do that in the playoffs. He was very good. So, it'll be interesting to see how his minutes go because I'm guessing, if they're winning the game, maybe Zadorov plays more. If they're losing, maybe Lohrei plays a little more.
Absolutely. And I think, Lohrei, it was funny. About midway through that Toronto series, when you saw how well he was starting to play, you could see the Leafs starting to really go after him physically because they were realizing it too, that he was a difference maker on the back end with the way he could escape out of the zone, move the puck, just the way he was facilitating and getting it up the ice quickly, and just the skill that he has, the offensive skill level he has. It was flashing a lot in the playoffs, in addition to doing all the little things that you have to do for your team to be successful, Steve, that you're talking about. And you could see the Leafs going after him because they saw that he was starting to make a difference in that series. He was unquestionably a very good playoff player. Mark, your expectations for Lohrei this year?
Well, I think he has a chance to continue to improve. I think he's always going to be a risk-reward type of defenseman who takes chances, and there are times when it's going to blow up in his face and the puck's going to end up in his net. But I think what he can give you offensively and breaking the puck out is maybe worth the price. Well, not maybe. If he can harness it a little bit, it is worth the price. It's what you want. You don't want him to be just a off the glass and out guy. He's much more talented than to just have him do that, and that's certainly not what they want. But I would expect continued improvement, and as he gets used to it. I mean, the guts that he has to make some of the plays that he makes is something you don't see, and it's kind of a special trait in a young guy like that to come in and have the confidence to say, you know what, I'm doing it my way, and we'll see what happens. It didn't work at times during the season for sure, but other times it paid off, and I would expect to continue to see the arrow point up on him in a big way.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think with a guy like him, I think the experience part of it is just going to help him as far as, picking spots when it maybe needs to be a little more conservative, like game situations, things like that, and then picking other spots where it's time to take risks and be creative and all that. And his feel for that, I can't imagine it's going to go anything but upward as he gains more NHL experience and confidence and sort of understands situationally things even better than he does now. Now with Major League Baseball in full swing, with the Boston Red Sox actually doing okay, sort of fighting for a playoff spot, certainly better than I think anybody would have expected going into this season. Now's a great time to use Prize Picks. If you're a Red Sox fan and if you're a baseball fan, with basketball and hockey having wrapped up, Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun and pretty simple. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. I mean, where can you go wrong? You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every single week, from lowering select players' stats projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. All kinds of good stuff going on right there. Prize Picks is also available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So if you want to get on board the Jaron Duran train with the Boston Red Sox and start loading up on his stats, Tristan Casas, when he comes back and starts hitting, all the Red Sox, if you want to get on board with them, just get it done with Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. That's download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match of up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Mark, we'll start with you on this one from MSpec1. I actually answered this one a little bit in the mailbag over the weekend, but I wanted to put it out there again because you guys are going to be here. This might be hard to get answered, but does Mark McLaughlin have any chance of making it with the Bruins or being an everyday NHL player? As a Bill Ricca resident, I've watched him and followed his career, and I'm hoping he makes it to the NHL. Thank you. Mark, your thoughts about Mark McLaughlin and his sort of the prospects of him being an NHL regular at this point?
I think he has a chance. With the Bruins, less of a chance, but I think he's certainly capable of playing in the league in a fourth line role. Maybe not here. He might have to move on. to another team. But last year in Providence, his scoring touch just vanished. Not that he was ever a gifted scorer or a guy who didn't have to work his nuts off to get every goal, but he had no puck luck last year, and that I think that affected how he looked at the game. I think he struggled offensively, and confidence-wise, he took a hit. But I don't think it's time to give up on him and write him off as a possible NHLer. I think it's possible that he could do that. Just the odds are against him in Boston because of the way the Bruins are built.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that the Bruins are as strong as they are, depth-wise, organizationally, and now they've gone out and get guys like Mark Kostelik and Max Jones that are probably going to be fourth-line staples. And Johnny Beecher is obviously a guy they think very highly of, first-round pick as well. That's kind of earmarked for something like that kind of a role as well. So I feel like at some point it's probably going to be in his best interest, even though I'm sure he's dreamed of being a regular with the Bruins. And he did have some great moments with the Bruins, especially when he first got signed and came up and scored and all that. But it does seem like it's a hard road for him, Steve, to become an NHL regular in Boston, and it might be somewhere else as a free agent or otherwise where he finally gets a chance to prove that somewhere else.
Yeah, judging by the Bruins' own actions in the offseason, you'd think that, no, they don't believe he's a regular
Right.
NHLer. I think he has a shot. We've seen glimpses when he's come up that he's a pretty good player. But, yeah, Mark is right. It's probably not going to be with the Bruins. They've got, a whole bunch of, bottom six guys now with Riley Tuft and Max Jones and, of course, Mark Kostelik. So it's going to be – it would be really tough for him to win a job, I think, in training camp.
I agree.
He's a great guy to have in your system to bring up when somebody's injured, but I'm sure he wants more than that.
I'm sure it had to be discouraging.
And they still have
when, what was it, 2 years ago? I think that he had an amazing training camp. He was fantastic, really looked like he should have been on that fourth line to start the year, and he wasn't.
Yeah.
I'm sure that at that point, the writing's got to be on the wall a little bit with a player like what do I have to do to get there? Especially with him where, Mark, to your point, like face-offs, penalty kill, working his bag off every shift and every practice and being a leader and being a good example, like all that stuff. He brings all of that to the table. And it feels like there's, spots around the NHL for guys like that.
Yeah, and they have also, Patrick Brown is still around,
Yep.
and Patrick Brown does all those things that Mark does, only with more experience and more, more. He's a guy who's actually played in the NHL for quite some time, so he's in Providence, kind of in that fourth line center role. Guy who does a little bit of everything, provides leadership. So, Mark's got that. There are other guys too that Mark kind of has to jump over or would have to jump over.
Yeah, and you hear great things about Patrick Brown too from people that are down there.
He's unbelievable.
I think I was talking to Riley Duran at development camp, and he was playing a little bit with Patrick Brown when he played for the P Bruins this past year, and he was talking about just what an education it was into professional hockey, playing alongside him, sitting next to him on the bench, just, him being sort of a Crash Davis type to those young kids that are coming in and showing them the ropes and being a great veteran example for players like that.
Yeah, there were a lot of nights in the second half of the season down the stretch that he was Providence's best player. So, he's one of those guys on the downside now, I guess. Good enough to play in the league, not good enough to play in the league in Boston. So it is what it is, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I think with him, when you watch him at the NHL level, I feel like the skating speed isn't like as good as it needs to be for him to be there, on a regular basis and be on a very good team as a fourth liner, and he's probably always going to be like bouncing between the both, and he'll have if he's in the right situation. This is what we're talking about with Mark McLaughlin. Maybe he gets a full season somewhere, or a couple full seasons, or whatever. If it's the right spot and the right team and the right fit, but like you could see. He was having a hard time getting the spots that he needed to get to consistently, skating speeds wise, when he was up at the NHL. But he brings a lot to the table, and I get more after talking to people about him and sort of seeing him, why they signed him and why they brought him into the organization. Because I think there's just a ton of value for him as a person and a player, in addition to what you're getting on the ice. All right, last one. About time, play the kids. Should have been done last year instead of a JVR type, especially when he got hurt and didn't do as much the last 3 months, including the playoffs. He looked slow to me on the ice, from Mary and Pat. Steve, do you want to see Merkulov, Lysell, those kind of guys, more youth being brought into the fold this year, a la, Beecher and Patra last year?
Well, yeah, there's room for one of them anyway. There's obviously a clear open, second line right wing spot. Mark, maybe you can answer this better. Whether he's equipped to play on his Merkulov is equipped to play on his offside. But if I was him, I'd be working on that one timer all summer long, because there's a spot for him. Lysell, I don't know if he's ready to make the jump. He's a bit of a perimeter player, as from what I've seen, and that's. I guess there's room for that if you've got a really hard team like the Bruins are obviously trying to create, but he's got to get to the dirty areas sometimes.
Mark,
yeah, he does, and I think you can live with a perimeter player. I think if the puck goes in for him, but if you're on the perimeter and you're not scoring, then what are you doing? So, I think, but I think it's time to find out with him. It sure seems like from, Don Sweeney's comments and such recently that, hey, it's there for him. He just has to take it. He can't show up and have a horrible camp. But I think if he has a halfway decent training camp, it's his. And see what he does with it. I think it's time, after 2 years in the minors, it's time for him to step up and take that and be the NHL player that he thinks he can be. Right now, this is a big training camp for him. And one thing I would like to see from him, and I'm not holding out any hope that I will, is that he needs to come to Boston and skate at Warrior and train at Warrior for the month of August, like all the pros do, like Marchand and Coyle and all of them. He needs to kind of immerse himself in that Bruins culture, in the off season, preparing for the season. If he trains in Sweden, for the summer and shows up the day before training camp, I don't know. To me, that's not the way to do it. So, we'll see what happens, but I think he needs to get here and stake his claim going into camp.
I agree. You can't make the team being sort of an outsider that's just parachuting in at a certain point. Like, you got to kind of show at a certain point when you're a player like that, you've got to show everybody in the organization you want it, and you're going to do what it takes to get it. And I don't know if he's fully done that at any point. Like, he started to do it last year to your, you've reported on this, Mark, and like other, you saw it out there that he started doing the right things during the season when he kind of got called to the carpet and had the, come to Jesus moment with Ryan Mugino. And he kind of got on board and did what he was supposed to do. And you want to continue to see him make the right decisions, do the right steps, and do everything he needs to do to prove himself to the veterans, and that he's going to do everything that they're going to do to be at his best and to help them win. And like that's part of my issue in general with him being the guy is like he's probably going to get put on a line, right wing, with Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle. How patient is Brad Marchand going to be with this kid Fabian Lysell if he's not playing the right way and he's not doing the right things? He's not going to last long playing on that line with Brad Marchand if he's not playing the right way and doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at Jake DeBrusk when he was put with Marchand and Bergeron. He rounded out the rough edges of his game pretty quick. And you're right. Marchand's not going to stand for I don't know, lackadaisical is the right term, but he's not going to stand for players aren't doing everything it takes to win and be successful.
Before we go, I've talked a little bit about Dev Camp. You guys were both there. I just want to get both of your thoughts on development camp. Anybody you really liked? Any overall thoughts or evaluations? Just any feelings you came out of development camp with about individual players or collectively, Mark?
Well, I think that the fact that Boston hasn't had draft picks is in evidence at that dev camp. There's a handful of who was there that Letourneau. Okay, I'm put Letourneau off to the side because he's a first rounder. But other than him, who was there that really makes you sit up and say, "Hey, this guy is really going to be a player"? I think there's some serviceable prospects there that they'll be able to play in the league, with varying degrees of success. But, there wasn't anyone there to me. I think the prospect pool is weak, and, that's been pointed out all over the place. But I think that was in evidence at camp. There, aside from Letourneau, there's a couple of – I like Riley Duran.
I thought Oscar Jelvik had a really good – development camp, and he should because he's a little bit
Oscar Jelvik. But again, I think his size, obviously, his size is against him. But yeah, he's coming along. He's coming along. I loved Gleb Veremeyev. I think that's a kid they should target as a free agent at the end of the college season. I think he's got a lot of the attributes that the Bruins value. But some of the other guys, I don't know. There's a lot of fourth line prospects there to me.
What, Mark? What did you think of Letourneau? Because I liked him. You have to judge him obviously on as being an 18-year-old kid coming from prep league in Canada and going against some guys that were 5-6 years older than him in that development camp. Definitely showed some pretty good offensive skills, showed some good confidence around the net and, patience around the net. Definitely knows how to use his body to shield defenders and, for puck possession and creating offense for himself. But he obviously also has a long way to go and was getting blown off the puck a lot, which can happen when you're 6'7" and you don't have a low center of gravity, right? Especially when you're going against strong opponents. But I also saw at times what I felt like was a little bit of a lack of intensity. There was one drill they were doing where he was going up against Frederic Brunet, who's obviously been pro for a little bit and is more experienced. And Letourneau at one point just gave up on the play on a one-on-one drill and kind of just it was oh, all right, whatever. And Brunet went, hustled, got the puck, got it out of the zone. Refs didn't blow the whistle. The drill was still going on. And some of it was probably a lack of experience, but it also seemed like at times, and when they were playing the 3-on-3 drills and in the tournament they played, there were times that he seemed very passive and just sort of away from what was going on and not really involved. And I think that's part of the youth, but that's also maybe a trait or a characteristic to watch moving forward as something that he's going to have to be, he's going to have to keep an eye on, where the fire is burning a little bit harder, like it was with some of those other guys that weren't first-round picks in that camp.
Yeah, the most common comparable for Letourneau is Tage Thompson, and for better and worse, he looks like Tage Thompson did at that age. He's gets pushed off the puck and all that, and but he's got tremendous skill. We saw it in tight when with his ability to kind of do what Brazeau did on some of his goals this year, just take it wide with the wide reach and lift it over the goalie's pad. So he's at least a couple of years away, I would think. What raised my eyebrows on when Sweeney talked to us on July 1st was when he was running down the list of prospects who could possibly fill that second line right wing spot. He also threw in Riley Duran, and I'm not sure he's the top 6 guy, but I think he's a very interesting prospect, and he might be a guy who's the pro game fits him better than the college game did. So he's going to be a player to watch.
I think Riley Duran is very smart. I think he's very polished. I think he does a lot of really good things. Does a lot of things really well. His size is pretty good too. He's a good-sized kid. Like, he doesn't shy away from the physical part of it if he has to play that way. Like, I could see him sticking around for a long time in training camp, fighting for an NHL job. Does he get it out of camp just because of all the NHL guys that they've signed? And, because, to your point, I'm not sure that he's a fit on the top 6 at the NHL level either with Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle in that kind of a role. But, Mark, I could definitely see Riley Duran pushing hard for a spot and getting NHL time this year when the situation calls for it, where he could get a chance to stick if he does get an opportunity.
I think it's realistic to think he could get some games for sure. I think time in most of the year, I think he'll be in Providence, but continued development for him. He was a better player in Providence at the end of last season in the American League than he had been at Providence College. Throughout the season, I think part of it is, maybe he was bored with the college game and it was time to move on. I think there's probably a lot of that going on. But, as far as prospect, he's, again, has a lot of the attributes that the Bruins like. He probably doesn't have the hands to be a guy that is really going to be a big-time offensive contributor. He's not that guy, but he certainly could be a guy who puts up 15, 20 goals and just plays a solid up and down wing going forward.
Absolutely. Can't have enough of those guys, especially when they're on entry-level deals. Steve and Mark, thank you very much for joining us. All right, Mark, enjoy the rest of your time
guys.
on Martha's Vineyard. Have a great time. Go hit the beach.
Must be nice.
I was on Martha's Vineyard right now.
It's pretty hot down here too. Let me tell you, not as hot as at home, but I'm gonna fight through it. I'm gonna fight through it.
Go take a dip in the water and cool off, Mark. Take it easy, my friend. All right, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Until next time, we'll see you at the rink.